Welcome to the Page 2 podcast episode number 76, and the first episode of season 4. Today's guest is someone whose name will be familiar to a lot of folks in the SEO space, Nick LeRoy. He's been a consistent voice in the industry, often offering some spicy, if not controversial, takes on hot topics. He's worn many hats over the years, and we're excited to talk through some of the newer ventures this afternoon, especially around Reddit. But rather than run for the full list, I'll let him share his own journey. Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you both so much for inviting me. Like I said, I'm excited to talk about this because there's no rules for all these efforts we got to do outside of rank for Google, and that's what it's going to take. So quick recap, my elevator pitch is I'm an independent SEO consultant. I spent the first 10 years working agency side, and I just wrapped up my 5th year of being freelance full-time, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time. As you guys had mentioned, I write a weekly newsletter called the SEO for Lunch, in which I just did like a fresh pivot. It used to be more of a recap for those who are already signed up, but now definitely check it out because it's a lot more of what we called previously Nick's Take. So it's basically just my spicy take, unfiltered. And you know what? Because I don't have an employer outside of myself, nobody's going to yell at me for saying things out loud. Last but not least, I also own SEOJobs.com, which is kind of funny given the freelance rule. But that stemmed, and we'll talk about it more, stemmed from personal experience on my end and a much needed solution for an area the industry struggles to fulfill.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there that I want to dive into. Maybe we start with the SEO jobs evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I recall, just sort of things that you've posted online, you used to be on the agency side and went through a layoff. Is that right?
Yep, I've been through 2 firings, unfortunately. We'll
Yes,
call it where it is.
me as well, ironically, yeah. So I'm curious about the SEO job. So when you were laid off, was it an immediate sort of move into, I want to do freelance moving forward? Or was SEO jobs sort of an outcome of trying to apply for other roles that you just weren't getting? And you're like, I need a better solution here.
So it's the latter. So I will just say quickly, the first job where unfortunately I was let go, I was very lucky in the sense that I was able to tap my network because, they say your network is your net worth.
That's
and
right.
I fortunately was in a new job sitting at the desk within 3 weeks, collecting severance and a new paycheck for a little while. So that worked out pretty well. And then we got into COVID. And unfortunately, this business had been impacted, and SEO is just a very small part of a large, company that was a lot more into like loyalty and traditional marketing. So unfortunately, my whole team was more or less cut. And I went on my journey of just, again, tackling, who in my network do I know? Had some interviews, going through what is a horrible experience anytime someone does a search for an SEO job on LinkedIn or Indeed. Because what do we always see? We see, Java developer. 3/4 of the way down, there's a bullet that says, if you know SEO, fantastic. It's a bonus.
Yeah, it's an added bonus, right?
Yeah. So long story short, so I made the leap at that point for freelancing, which I'm sure we'll talk a bit more. But I had an opportunity, a guy named Peter Askew had reached out. Many know him as the Onion Guy because he owns onions.com and Vidalia Onions. And he had actually bought SEOJobs.com and kind of rebuilt it. And he was looking for somebody to partner with that has a little bit more, visibility. I won't say like credibility, but visibility in the industry. And we started working together. Long story short with that is, I love Peter, but he had an opportunity to actually buy back a project he regretted selling. So I took that as an opportunity to buy him out. He was able to go into a project that he's very passionate about. And then I was able to just kind of give it my all for SEO jobs. And now it's been like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask how long. So 2 or 3 years. So 5 years total freelancing, 2 or 3 years managing SEOJobs.com. And then where does SEO for lunch sort of fit into that? That's even older, right?
Correct. So this one has a little bit of a fun story. I'll try to keep it shortish, but I've been writing for 8 years, plus. It was like 432 issues, I think was the last one, which is funny because the way I like the spicy take. People might have seen on LinkedIn, I wrote something like 432 issues down the toilet, because making a pivot, was crazy, but we could talk about more about that. I think it was good. But long story short for that one was it originally was a recap of just like industry updates. And the story behind that was while I was working in these agencies, I had some clients where I was working directly with like CEOs and VPs. And as we all know, they only have about this much space in their head to think about SEO. Not because they don't care, but because they have 32 different things that are juggling in the air. And I had one leader just come to me and she's amazing for this. And she just is like, Nick, I trust you, but I'm going to tell you that I don't know SEO and I don't really care to learn it.
Right.
So I need you to help me understand what should I be looking for? How do I know my team is doing well? How do I hold you accountable? So what I ended up doing was I just started sending her an email once every couple of weeks, just being like, look at these 3 links. Google says there's an update. This industry veteran says, they found a lot of success doing this and we are doing that. And it was just kind of a good way to do that. And then it turned into, I should write this and distribute it to my team. And then it was like, you know what? We are all lazy individuals as a whole. Why don't I blast it out to everybody and anybody who wants it? And secretly, it was holding me accountable because we know as SEOs, the biggest risk to our jobs is not staying up to date. Right. So by putting this all together, it forced me to stay up to date and not just rely on the knowledge that I had at that time. So again, fast forward 8 years later, and in my opinion, there's a couple other individuals who are doing something very similar to what SEO for Lunch was, but much better. And so I wanted just an opportunity to kind of pivot and rely more on my voice than being the guy that kind of curates everybody else's voice.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking about, for years, still even, I have a Feedly list of all the RSS feeds, and once or twice over the weekend I'll just sort of riff through it. And unfortunately I'm still old school. I don't like reading so much on a device, so I'll email it to myself. Now my email box is filled with a whole bunch of emails that I still need to go back and read. It's basically the email version of having 100 tabs open. But I'm really curious about, so 8 years of content, right, that you've just been publishing over time. I'm curious if there's a way, or have you thought about, I'm sure you have, using AI to sort of utilize that 8-year library of content to assist maybe with some of the spicy takes, or to sort of add some color to the spicy takes that are going to be coming out of it in the future.
I think there probably is a way to at least get concepts and ideas to be able to talk about. But again, the biggest problem with being a curated newsletter is none of this is your original writing or thinking.
Got it. Yep.
And it was so timely. I had to make sure that I was writing it the day before, because I look silly if there's a Google algorithm update that was announced 2 days ago and it's not in that email. Right. So that's one of the benefits that I'm looking forward to with this new format, is I have 6 articles as drafts right now, and they're not finished. But I love the idea of if life gets busy, I could just be this one, let's QA it. Boom, it's out.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. So I've been trying to ramp up my sharing on LinkedIn. It's something I've, when you sort of start a business or you start even freelancing, you're so busy doing the work that oftentimes the marketing of, yourself or even the agency sort of takes a back seat. And Joe and I really sort of thought more strategically around like being more visible, sharing the successes that we're having. Um, I'm curious how you approach that, right? Like coming up with the ideas and building out that sort of inventory of content that you can sort of pluck from. Are you only doing that for the SEO for lunch side? Are you, because I know you blog and also do a lot of other webinars and things like
Yeah.
that as well. Like how do you
So,
keep that inventory sort of going?
I would think it's not as structured and forward thinking as it might come off. I think the best way for me to explain it to you is I kind of have a reverse mindset of an entrepreneur. Most people are just like, pour the gas, grow as fast as you can, and like make the cash while it's there, and tomorrow will be tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of live in this idea, and you can tell this is me still dealing with being let go and having resources taken away. I take a very defensive approach to my business. It's like I have a line item for like how much I need to make to be able to feed my kids, and keep the house over. And then everything after that is just kind of a bonus. But I realized too, one of the limits for being an independent consultant is I can't work with a dozen clients. So while I'm very intentional in making sure that each of my engagements are fairly weighted the same from like a revenue perspective, I'm always thinking about it only takes me losing or gaining 2 clients to completely make or break the year.
Interesting.
And that goes into answering your questions. So what I have done is just kind of baked my presence online into the daily routine. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, whether they're going on their own, building a agency, is they're only involved online when they want something. And it's super obvious. We've all seen that. It's like all of a sudden this person that you remember talking to 2 years ago, and they're posting on LinkedIn. It's like, okay, they're looking for a new role. Cool for you. But like, it's very clear.
Yeah.
So again, with all of that, I'm a big fan of add value, do favors with kind of nothing in return, knowing that 8 out of 10 times it does come back full circle.
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting. The SEO industry for so long, I felt like was very closed. Like as soon as someone finds something that works, it's like, I'm going to hug this as tight as I can and, exploit it, if you will, until,
Milk it.
it gets banned or whatever. Now I feel like the mantra is very different, right? It's sort of like oversharing, and you'll sort of reap the benefits of that rather than sort of keeping these things close to the vest, which is great for the industry. And I think it's evolving so quickly. Even things that are being shared are almost outdated just because of technology, AI, et cetera.
Yeah. And the reality too is, sorry guys, I must be getting a package up so you can hear my dog barking. The reality is, I did a fair amount of affiliate marketing earlier in my career, and it was amazing. I was very vocal back then about, anyone who says buying links doesn't work is just like a puppet for Google. And, but the reality is like fast forward 15 years, here we are in 2025. It's not that you can't manipulate Google. We still see it all the time.
Right.
But it arguably takes more effort to manipulate Google than it does to actually create a valuable product or service and then be rewarded by Google with visibility. And I'll put the big asterisk because now we're putting AI overviews on everything, which is stealing our visibility. But I do feel strongly about that.
I love the double click into the link building side of things. I feel like it's been a consistent topic, but I feel like the conversation has sort of waned on link building maybe over the last like 2 years. And now, we're starting to think through like how to influence LLM results and, being included in your competitive set in these listicles and things like that. And we're sort of reverting back to, in some cases, like old school link development. Love to hear your thoughts on, how or if you're seeing kind of a renaissance around link building, if that makes sense, or sort of how you're thinking about link building in today's world.
So I'm glad you brought it up. I do have a very spicy take on link building. I think a lot of people claimed it's not necessary. It's a low ranking factor. And the reason they do that is not because they necessarily believe it. They convince themselves of that because it's not scalable, it's not cheap, and it's not quick. So anybody who is business minded sees it as an incredibly negative ROI with no way to be able to say, hiring people even at the junior level to spam the internet until I get a bunch of links. And then it may or may not correlate with increase in visibility. But by the way, we're jamming out new content. We're building out the brand. Like, nobody likes it for that aspect. And that is why Google relies on it as one of its signals. But I think where I'm at now is I'm talking a lot to brands about leveraging not only PR, but one unlock has just been even like their affiliate, relationships.
Oh,
because
sure.
as these LLMs and AI bots are crawling the internet, we have to remember they're kind of the equivalent of like the 2005 Google bot.
That's right.
So they're not differentiating at this point. When they mention, Nick's black hat, it doesn't matter if it's an affiliate link, a direct link, or a citation. What those bots are seeing is New York Times is writing about it in their best, place to buy a black hat. And then you go to USA Today, and then you go to, nickslittlblog.com. And it's just that consistency. And again, because I suspect them to get much smarter over time, just like Google was. But right now, it's just like, get your brand out there, get your products talked about. And I think that the biggest hack to that is, paying for links, paying for advertising, doing an affiliate, offering. Because now, and I don't think anybody can say they know definitively how to do AI, despite all those people on LinkedIn that are now AI experts. But, I think, again, that's what we know is kind of moving the needle right now. So to answer your question, I don't think links have ever truly died, but I think that there's a renewed interest in it. And because AI is, the shiny object that all leadership is interested in, we can almost pitch it as an AI benefit to get the buy-in, knowing fully well that it's going to help for SEO as well.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting angle to pitch it from that perspective, because I think you get the decision maker's ear much easier if you can apply or sort of add AI, / benefit to it. So how do you, as a freelancer, how do you approach, trying to get your clients to buy in on link building? Are they, and if you don't want to share these details, that's fine. But I'm curious, do you have like a separate budget that you sort of work through with the client? Like, we expect you'll need X number of links, or, some sort of approach like that. And so here's a budget specifically for that. Or are you investing more on the content side with the goal of acquiring links through that content asset? Or sort of how do you approach that with your freelance clients?
So I'm very fortunate in the sense that I tend to work almost exclusively with enterprise companies. So they're largely known brands. And many times they have their own like PR departments. So my role is more so to just kind of play conductor. It's like more content, fix this technical, PR, help over here. So I cheat a little bit by having that strong opinion of like, links are great, but everybody's lazy, when I'm sitting there going out and just like literally just trying to squeeze each lever a little bit harder. But what I will say is, and I think this is what a lot of SEOs are going to learn this year in 2025 and beyond, is SEO, willingly or unwillingly, has always been siloed, or you can kind of put on your own island. It's like, kind of go do your voodoo magic, and whatever we get is free traffic. The reality now is your SEO partners need to be integrated with all your other channels, because when we're measuring it, it doesn't show you in that drop-down organic search as your performance. But we understand that PR, they're already screaming and providing value for the brand. Let's make sure that they are linking, and most of them know to have links. Most of them don't think as far as, let's link deeper into the site. They might just do, the homepage. Or one example that I'd done is one of my clients, I had them build like profile pages for all of their like C-suite, because they often get interviewed on their sites. And then these people don't always want to link to a commercial page, which makes sense.
Oh, sure.
But I can get them to, I can have their PR person say, when you reference our CEO, can you link to their profile page? Because what that is it's an alternative to linking to like their LinkedIn profile. So that's just an example of like where link building is incorporated. I tend to try to just squeeze a little bit extra juice out of whatever is there, because I'm a big believer that there isn't any one or two links you can get that helps you win. It's just like consistent, scalable best practices. Yeah. I'm a big 80-20 model person.
Yeah, I love that. I think one thing that we've found working with PR companies is that boilerplate that sort of lives at the bottom of the press release is often like years old, and it's gone through numerous rounds of iteration and legal review before it's approved. And so what we focused on is coming up with a couple of different variants of that boilerplate, all of which use different anchor text, link to different deep areas of the site, and then sort of rotating those, right? So maybe it's once a quarter, option 3 gets plugged in there. And so at least you're not always linking to the naked URL or, the version without the HTTPS, which is so common. So at least we can sort of manage for how those links are being applied, which, is a small win, but we'll take it.
Absolutely. And here's one hot take, and this is a sword that I will die on, and people get really upset about it. So here's your snippet for, getting people to watch this whole episode. But SEO, historically, you used to be able to build a business on the back of SEO. And then once you get all the visibility and traffic, you could kind of then be like, oh, now we're going to put the effort into the business and make it worthwhile for people to convert. Think about, you cannot have a nerd wallet anymore today. If we go live with 1 million pieces of content, even if it's your best content in the world, you can't build off of the back of SEO. And now, like I said, it seems like a very small detail, but SEO can't create a business, but a business with really flipping good products and services results in good SEO. All that being said, is historically we could get clients. So the hot take really is, and this is just me just saying out loud, is SEO used to be the towel that we could polish the turd with to turn it into a piece of gold. And that's not the case anymore. There is no amount of SEO to make a bad product, bad service, a unreputable or a hated brand like do well.
I mean, that is definitely a spicy take. I'm curious, like, what do you think happens to sites like NerdWallet and some of these others that have gone public on the backs of, primarily content, right? Do you think they slowly die over time, or?
Not for the reasons that we are talking about. I think there's other things that are of concern, but I tend to kind of believe that, here's another, I'm going to just throw it out there. I'm going to put myself on the chopping block, but I personally kind of believe that there's almost like a legacy index. So it's like if you built your site kind of in the heyday, and then you have authority and you have, the right clicks going in and out, with that nav boost, then you kind of just get to stay. And the best example I can give you is I worked with a job site once and we created millions of pages. All the category permutations with the logo or with the states and cities and all that fun stuff. Basically what Indeed and ZipRecruiter and LinkedIn do. Those guys all show up on page 1. I could not get like more than 20% of this client's pages to even get indexed.
Huh.
And now, grant, this was pre like AI days where you could probably stuff a bunch of content. But basically what I'm trying to say is if you kind of pass the quality threshold, backdated maybe like 5 years, I think Google tends to give you that benefit of the doubt. But the quality threshold, the threshold in which you pass and get indexed, is so much higher today than it ever was in the past. So I don't think the nerd wallets, the Wayfairs, and some of these amazing businesses that really were built off of SEO, I don't think they're in danger of Google just being like, oh, you're now de-indexed. I think the bigger issue is just continuing to be reliant on organic search to run your business. And I think both of them are doing better jobs of finding other sources.
So don't let quantity get in front of quality. It seems like we're always having that tug of war with speed and output, but it feels like, I mean, you talk about it for link building. You could also talk about it for content development too. Try to always stay with quality first, building quantity over time.
100%, because the reality is, and I even hate to admit this, is SEO is now a vehicle to capture brand demand. So I would much rather people spend more time and, again, building out those services or products, whatever you're doing to add value and make your money, double down there and not have 10 articles about, why your cat sleeps in a, small bed, so you should buy my mattress. And, I mean, I'm being facetious, but we all know what we're talking. And I'm guilty of it too. Like, I come on these shows and I say stuff like this, but I have been the one that's like, here's 100 topics that we need to cover. And it's more of a balance. I'm not saying don't do it, but the best analogy going back to it's like, you cannot use SEO as this cloth to turn a turd into gold anymore. You could in the past, but now it's not either or it's both. And that is why I believe one of the biggest things going into like 2026, the ethical people that, have morals are going to tell some leads and prospects that SEO is not a good fit for them. And that's something that our industry does a really bad job of.
Yeah.
We sign anybody who is willing to pay. And the cruel reality is, and I'm sure you guys have talked to these people, it's like, there are companies that should not invest in SEO either at all or yet. And one red flag I will give you, some of us have probably heard this before. I've had leadership come to me and say, if I don't turn the ship around in 6 months, this business is going under. And the first thing that I say to them is like, SEO isn't your solution. And it's like, and it's not because I don't want to, help you or because, I don't believe in your business. It's just like, that's not how SEO works. Right. You'd be much better off with your Hail Mary on your paid search or paid social, something where you can validate the success almost instantly.
I was just reading an article. I can't remember who wrote it. I'll find it and put it in the show notes, but it was almost taking the concept of product market fit with sort of like SEO demand fit. Like there isn't always going to be SEO demand for every industry or every product. And so I think you're hitting the nail on the head from the perspective of, the ethical SEOs that are out there will be the ones who are saying, listen, potential client, this is probably not a good fit for you. There isn't that product market or that SEO market fit in 2026 with how things are evolving. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. So if SEO wouldn't be a fit and they needed something in 6 months, would it be like a paid media approach or something like that? Or
I would think so. I mean, again, my specialty is in SEO, and I'm very intentional, have a network of people that I can send them to for the other ones. But the first thing that I always do is I send them to somebody who's, skilled in the SEO, in the paid arena. Again, it's just that idea of you need fairly quick validation that your product or service, or however you're making your revenue, is indeed valued by people. And I tell people this all the time too. If they reach out to me and say, we just launched our new Shopify site. I've got the latest and greatest product that nobody's ever heard, but everybody's going to want it. And I'm like, have you run any paid against it? They're like, nope, because this is going to be the next thing. And then they're like, oh, but by the way, I'm paying all the bills out of my personal savings account, so I need this to explode. And which then I just basically say, oh, again, It's not that SEO is not important. I think everybody should have their web presence optimized. However, the worst thing that you can do for your business is invest in SEO before your product or service is like validated. And one thing that I feel like people should hopefully be taking this is realize how we're talking about SEO, but we're actually talking a lot more about building a business. Because it goes back to what I'm saying. You have to build a business, have a world-class product or service, and then SEO is the result. It's no longer build this website on your exact match domain, wait for the traffic to come in, but realize it's not converting. So now we're going to build a real service or product, and then we're all happy. Low risk, exceptionally high reward, not a thing anymore. At least with
That's
SEO.
right. That's right. I'm curious to get your take to circle back on your comment around SEO being sort of like a brand channel. I think there's been a lot of Mike King, for one, sort of very vocal around his thoughts on that application. There's certainly folks on the other side who are saying, well, maybe not so much. I'm curious how you guys think about or how you think about SEO as more of a brand play versus maybe performance like it was in the past.
Yeah, I think we're kind of splitting hairs and trying to come up with like new labels for what we have already done or should have done. Right. Because I don't think the answer is one end or the other. This isn't billboard marketing where it's like a flat cost, you get what you get, and you look at it as a sunk cost, you don't know. But we also know attribution is so off and goofy, let alone the fact that it never gives the benefit of the doubt to a free channel. Things are messed up. So my non-answer to your question is basically, I think SEO is a good channel for capturing demand, but it is not a channel to build demand. So if you're building demand and you sell sponges, and now you also rank for sponges, like as that demand for sponges go up, it's like then SEO can help you capture it. Think about like the Scrub Daddy is what I'm thinking in the back of my head. It's like that brand capture of people doing, Scrub Daddy, obviously that's branded, but then the SEO play of Scrub Daddy versus whatever brands we've been buying that nobody knows, over the years. Those are SEO plays. And they're capturing that visibility, that brand demand for something that's growing and skyrocketing.
Right.
How's that for a non-answer?
I mean, it was sort of a non-answer, but also a great answer. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. It almost goes back to the original reason for keyword research, which is, you want to target keywords that have some sort of demand behind them, right? Because that's going to translate into traffic. And then theoretically, if the site's structured well, you have calls to action, whatever, that will lead to a conversion. I think there's, that makes a ton of sense. Like you can't create a piece of content and then expect the demand to come, right? There needs to be some sort of mechanism that's driving that. And then when they go to search for that particular thing or brand, right, then the content is there. So, exactly. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
I think it's really good business. It's really good business advice too. I wonder why more people starting businesses don't start with keyword research to say like, what is this business I want to get into? What is the demand behind it?
Right. Well, and again, I think that's just like the two different stepping stones. It's like if you are an entrepreneur and you're bootstrapping it and you're doing it all yourself, like, yes, I do think that you should be able to go and do some preliminary market research. That's important. The other end, though, is like if you're paying for services and if you're bootstrapping, very likely you're in that part of the journey of I need to get ripped off once or twice before I invest properly. But these SEOs aren't thinking like a business owner. And I'm not talking about the we are all family, think like a business owner. I'm talking about what are the opportunities for this industry to solve? What are the biggest pain points? And then how are we leveraging these SEO tactics to, again, capture that demand? because and you'll notice that when we go back and listen to this, I don't talk about keywords or keyword visibilities. I very specifically say topics. And it's not for semantics point, but really the best example is like nothing gets me on my tangent faster than when people ask me for like a keyword ranking report, because you want to rank for cars and you're on page 3 forever. But that same page that's target for it ranks for 10,000 other keywords and you're getting all the traffic and you're making, $10,000 a day. But you're going to come back to me and say, I'm not working because cars isn't ranking well.
We do something similar. We call them themes.
Yep.
So we may say, there are 500 keywords we think you should be ranking for, but there are really only 8 themes. And we're going to talk about themes when we talk about your reporting month over month over month.
I love that. I'll give you guys just a quick story that kind of validates the theme approach. During COVID, because I'm an SEO dork, and had extra time, and as a later 30-year-old male, it was only natural that I'd buy a trigger because that's, where I am in the era of my life, as my daughters would say. But with that, I couldn't just like smoke all this great food and not like SEO it. So I started taking pictures and then I created like a mini recipe site that was specific to like smoking food. But the part that drives everybody nuts is I love like SEMrush. Like I'm an ambassador for them, but I didn't do a lick of keywords research. You know what I did? I went to the store. I picked up the meat that I thought was interesting and I wanted to pay for. And whatever it was labeled as, that's what my title tag was. So it was bottom roasts smoked by Traeger. It was like, I just used that type of logic because yes, a bottom round roast could be called that. It could be 3 other things. But guess what? When you guys or your families are looking for what to eat and you're rummaging through the freezer and then you're like, I got this chunk of meat. Do you Google, how do I cook this chunk of meat? Or do you go, oh, it's a sirloin. And now you're saying like sirloin recipe ideas. So again, that in my opinion is one of the biggest gaps in our industry is people aren't thinking critically. They're going to SEMrush, they're typing in smoker, exporting, 20 keywords, and then saying, we need to write 20 pieces of content for each of these keywords. Like, screw that.
Yeah. Instead of thinking about what's getting cooked on the smoker and then, like more consumer applicable, scenarios, right? Like someone's, to your point, is going to be much more specific around what they're looking for than just generic smoker type terms, which would also be a lot more competitive to rank for anyway.
Exactly. It's amazing. I bought I remember a Dungeness crab and I was like, can you smoke a crab? Like, why the heck not try? It's COVID. I got nothing else to do. And like all of a sudden I was getting like 2,000 visits a month just to that like post, and it was like, I never went into SEMrush to validate it, but I would never in my wildest dreams suspect that people were searching like smoked Dungeness crab.
Can you do it successfully? Does it taste good?
It tasted fine, but did I, a lot of people brought up comments of like, how would this smoke get through the shell? It's like, oh, that's a really good question, but I ate it and I'm here to survive, or I'm here to talk. So, but my whole point is like, and this is no longer a secret, but the best non-secret, out there is go to Reddit. Like, I don't care what topic and service you are providing. Somebody's complaining about something. Like the world loves to complain. So go into Reddit and mine all those questions and complaints. And then, fuck the third-party tools. Write content that solves for that. Because I guarantee you, regardless what these tools say, like that's the content that is going to drive a bunch of traffic and it's going to be the one that converts.
John and I both spent a lot of time on Reddit. Maybe this is a good time to segue into your recent acquisition.
Absolutely. So I think so go ahead, Joe.
We were just going to ask, like, how did you do that?
So I would say, I think I used the word acquisition very intentionally to get people's opinions. So yes, I did acquire it. Like, and for anyone who's not familiar, obviously I run SEOJobs.com, but the SEO in me knows fairly, not fairly, we don't care. Like, Google ranks Reddit for everything. So now Google's stealing all of my traffic. So I'm thinking, where is the traffic going to? And we see Reddit go like this. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should try to get 1% of the traffic that's going to Reddit. So being the Reddit fanboy I just changed the URL and typed in r/SEOJobs, which is the subreddit. And I had noticed that it had existed, but there wasn't a post in like 4 years. So it was completely dormant. And what did exist was just full of spam. And the first thing I did is, on the right-hand panel, it'll tell you who the moderators are. I sent a message to the moderator and just said, hey, I own SEO Jobs. Like, is there any chance you want to collaborate on this? Because again, giving is good, right? But I didn't get any response. So I was just doing some research again, pain point of what happens if you're interested in a subreddit that's not being moderated and the moderator is not active. Well, little did I know, there's a process for Reddit to basically assess a subreddit, and you can basically take ownership of it. So because
Interesting.
our SEO Jobs hadn't been active for 4 years, I sent like 3 messages to the mod, because that's like part of the process. And I documented it. And then it basically was show all of this to Reddit. And one day I woke up and it was like, you are the mod for, subreddit SEO Jobs. So
it wasn't $1 million purchase like we were thinking behind the scenes.
No, like I said, you all know I love my salacious headlines, but I did acquire it, just not in the sexy way that everyone thinks. But I do think that that's an opportunity. I do think that there's, again, SEOs, like, we need to think outside of Google. And this is just a good example, and I think we're going to get to the point where there's already a lot of like affiliate arbitrage with Reddit, but those are communities, those are people, and that's where you want to be. So,
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that Reddit is, I think it's technically classified as like a social platform, but I think just because of its visibility, there's an argument to be made. It is an organic channel, right? It takes up organic, positions in a search result, drives a ton of traffic. It's technically, I guess, referral traffic at that point, but can be, very lucrative, as you mentioned, from the affiliate side. Easier maybe to manipulate, right? Buying votes and whatnot, but
I think there's always the long-term approach and there's always the short-term approach. Yeah. They both can get you to the same point. It's just, is one long-lasting or not?
So this whole thing is so fascinating to me. So in fact, I was so inspired, I started the Page 2 podcast Reddit channel. I have no idea if anyone will even join it, but I was like, even if I use it for testing at some point in the future, like, I should just do this.
It should be like your social media handles now. It's like, take your business and it's like you get your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, and your subreddit. Make sure you're active so people like me don't go in and steal it from you, but
exactly. But I'm curious, like, how long was the process of like submitting your documentation to, and I'm sure this will vary, right? But I'm just curious, like, what that timeline would even look like.
So it's a really hard question because I identified that it existed. And for the longest time, I was just like, oh, shoot, like, it doesn't exist. So then there was just kind of a period of time. And then I like subscribed to it. And then I'd think about it and go back. And then I kind of put one and one together of like, nobody's here. So if we include the time of maybe like a week or two in between messaging the moderator, and then when I got access to it, maybe 2 months, like it really wasn't too long. I will say, I don't know this for sure, but it's an asterisk on this, is I did go all in. So I am a more casual, where they call it, like when you just read all the comments, but you don't participate.
Like a lurker, not necessarily.
Yes, a lurker. Yeah. Thank you. But my profile is like 20 years old.
Yeah, mine's 17.
So I suspect, I don't know, but because I put the claim in, even though I don't have the post history, I suspect that they probably put some sort of effort into, is this person active, credible again? Again, I might be giving them way too much credit. And there's a lot of people that are telling me that like I screwed up bad, because if they ever take down or say I'm spamming Reddit, like it's going to kill my, username that's been tied. But the good news is because I'm a lurker, I guess I can just create a new one.
Yeah, that's true. So what are your plans for it? Are you, I'm assuming you're already like posting and whatnot. Have you seen any success from it?
I would say mild success. So this is where I'm going to get in trouble, but I think I'm being a bit creative, is because SEOJobs, we typically only post like 2 to 5 jobs per day. What I did is I jimmy rigged a couple systems and APIs so that when every job goes live, it gets posted automatically into the SEOJobs subreddit. And it goes through my name as the moderator. So when you go into it, it's always like the name of the position, job description. And then I put a link to SEOJobs at the very top. And I basically say, apply here if interested. So I am seeing Reddit traffic, but I think this is a representation of, say, the 200 or 300 people that have recently joined that are clicking on it versus like, Reddit is now showing me on their homepage. But that is something that I want to test more, is like, I'm even curious, and I might throw a couple $100 at it. Do Reddit ads just to build up visibility. It almost reminds me of like Facebook pages with the like button. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go all in because I fully expect that they'll turn the organic dial down. But talking about short term, it's like for me and SEOJobs, I don't really need to sell the value of my service. The thing that's the most difficult for me is you either know about the site or you don't. I don't get a lot of people saying, I hate your site, you should just go away. It's just like, oh, I never heard of it. So my marketing effort is a lot less SEO, but brand visibility. So I'm screaming on it at LinkedIn and people think this guy's hawking his site again, and then, go on Reddit. And it's like, we all know that you can't promote yourself. Trust me, the R SEO boys, have gotten me twice because I'll post like interview question template that I have on the site. I have a mock interview simulator actually. Okay. And there was a post on like our big SEO that was literally like, going into an interview tomorrow, what should I be prepared for? And I wrote, focus more on being creative and explaining how you do it versus being able to answer a question. And then I said, however, if you truly want to memorize questions and answers, why don't you try out this, mock interview? Oh, I got a nasty gram and DMs and, it's like eliminated originally. But either way, I'm going on and on there. But I just think it's an opportunity again of, we know Google's taking back some of the traffic. We can whine and cry on social media as much as we want. It's not going to change anything. So I think the responsible thing for us to do for our projects and our clients is to figure out, where are your users going to? And I was just on a podcast a couple days ago where I mentioned this. I think where it becomes really hard is agencies and even myself, we write up the scope and then our work is basically tied to Google and then like measured by the success of organic channel. Right. And I think the reality is like, we have to start having more open scopes and flexible, because again, we talked about partnering with PR. We talked about, partnering with social media. These are all things that we talk about for distribution. But when you're a service provider, we all know that scope creep is like the biggest like risk to providing a service. But I think we need to get creative. And I think that's the direction SEO is going to. I'm calling it non-paid marketing is how I'm referring to it to my clients. But that is how I'm getting around the fact that all of my clients, their editorial content is down 30%, just like everybody else's. So what I'm doing is let's better define what it is that I'm trying to do. I'm your SEO guy, but what if we call this like organic marketing or non-paid marketing? And then at that point, I think we can treat it like paid search, where we're running campaigns. If we publish a blog post and then you get whatever you get from Google, and then it gets posted to Twitter, Facebook, every other social, and you get organic traffic, you send it in your email blast, they come back. Your paid search team is now expanding the keywords that they can bid on. They get back and they get to cookie these people. Like, why is SEO not getting any credit for this?
John and I have been talking about this for so long. It's almost like the SEO gets pigeonholed into the search engine. It's like, is a new name what we need? You earlier in this show, you said like, you made a comment about like, let's not get too worried about what we're calling things, but does the title of, if you're an SEO specialist or whatever, does that pigeonhole you into larger conversations? I think it does a little bit. And we'll move to AI at some point, because optimizing to AI is something we want to talk to you about. But are we really just optimizing for free traffic? Like, is that what we're trying to bring in, like relevant but free traffic?
So Joe, I love that you said that, and I'm going to be a little vulnerable here. At the beginning of the year, I was pretty down and out on SEO. Like, it's the first time in my 15-year career where I was legitimately just taking a second and wondering, like, is my skill set going to be relevant and valuable in 5 years? And I know we've all heard the SEO is dead and it's dying, and it's like, that's not even what I'm talking about. It's just like, legitimately, let's take what I want it to be versus the direction it's going. And I firmly believe, because now I've kind of adopted this approach, like, it's not that it's going away. It is a constant evolution. But I've been iterating many, many, many times on this one and many other podcasts that SEO will die if we are only measuring it exclusively from the organic channel. And just to be clear, sorry, when I say organic search channel, I keep thinking in my head, default channel, drop down organic. I think we need to do a better job of understanding all these great efforts that we're doing. And I always, for the longest time, referred to it as the halo effect. And I know we all talk about it. It's this unquantifiable, halo effect. And we need to do a better job. And again, the post will be live before this goes live, but that is the SEO for lunch that I'm writing today, is that attribution screws SEOs, but that shouldn't stop us from guessing, getting directional information, because you know what CEOs don't act on and they don't invest? Trust me, bro. Because they don't care about that. Because our paid media friends are coming back and they're saying, you already spent $1 million, but I'm giving you 4-to-1 return, and I think we can scale to 5 million. And the CEO goes, where can I take this money? Oh, you're investing $500,000 in SEO for, trust me, bro, halo effect. Right. This is best practices. I'm an SEO, but I'd be the first one as a business owner. Again, we go back to that. Boop. Because what do they say? Like, CMOs or CEOs, like, they have like an average lifespan at a job, like 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
SEO is not the channel that they're going to back because it takes that long. So again, there is what is right and where you should invest long term. But then there's politics and the economy, and nobody, to my knowledge, has figured out the infinite money glitch. Let me know if you have. So sorry, I don't know where I was going with this, but
We can go a lot of different ways.
yeah, I just think it goes back to what you guys were saying, though. I think we need to have a better idea of just what is the impact of the work that we're doing. And historically, we all did a really good job of justifying it from one channel exclusively. And I think we need to go back, and it's not necessarily a rob Peter to pay Paul, because that's what a lot of this is. But let paid search continue to have the victory, but quantify the assist.
Right,
That's probably the
exactly.
best thing. It's like, we hear about the assist, metric in, various sports. We don't talk about assists in marketing.
Yeah, that's right. It goes back to the common problem with the silos, right? And there's so many opportunities to combine those things together into a more holistic strategy that lists everything, right? We're sort of having those two things work together. So I know we're almost at our time here, so I'd love to get your thoughts on just, you probably alluded to it a little bit, but how you see AI impacting our industry moving forward. I think you had some great thoughts around what 2026 is going to look like from a service, provider perspective and being upfront and ethical about that. But, what are the realities of what you're seeing?
All right, some more spicy takes here, because there's kind of two ends of it. There's the SEO in me that wants to think that AI overviews are going to shut down because they're not valuable. Or, there's going to be the legislator is going to say it's illegal, monopoly. Like, that's what I want to hear. We both know that's not going to happen. Like, the three of us just know that it's evolving. What I do think, and a lot of people don't like hearing this, because as we know, people are being let go left and right across like the whole tech sector. But my spicy take here, and I mean this more than anything, unfortunately, is the barrier to entry into SEO specifically has always been incredibly low. You don't need a degree. You don't need like a fancy computer. You don't need to code. Like, you need an internet connection, a computer, and like the ability to sell at some level. And what that has always done in our industry is divide those that can provide good services and positive returns on the investment versus those that I'm calling the get rich quick Bitcoin bros. And I think as a result, historically, having a really good SOP and then hiring like cheap labor or cheaper labor was a really good way to make $1 million in revenue. Like, I don't want to say it's not hard, because that completely discounts people's work, but it's not hard. I think the reality is now a lot of those SOPs were what I refer to as checkbox SEO. We're doing our on-page optimizations. You get your 4 blog posts. And if you are a physical presence, we do your local SEO. And that, between all of those checkbox items, used to provide enough value to justify a $1,000 retainer, $2,000 maybe, but now it's not. And what's going to happen, and this is the spicy part that I truly believe in, I think we are going to all be held accountable. So these individuals who aren't passionate and understand and keeping up to date with the industry aren't going to be able to pivot into the strategies that it takes to succeed. Companies are going to leave them for that reason. And these individuals that the whole point they're into SEO was to make quick money, they're going to leave the industry. And I am telling a lot of people that I think 2025 is the year to kind of like buckle up and survive. Do the best work you can for the contracts that you have, because new work is hard to get right now. But if we can thin out this this industry a little bit by getting those people that were masking their value add or just charging such a small amount that, people weren't looking at it. If we can get a chunk of those to leave in 2026, I think that that is kind of like the cream that floats to the top, are going to be able to thrive even more into the future. In
Yeah,
conjunction with everything else we said. It's not about the checkbox all of a sudden working in 2026.
Yeah, we've been thinking about that a lot. I mean, there's, when you come into these tough economic environments or, AI-driven environments, there's an opportunity to sort of clear out some of the nefarious stuff that's happening. And those that can survive are going to be in a much better place because there will be that demand for that work at some point. And, the total number of choices will be smaller. Well, listen, Nick, this has been incredible. Really enjoyed the conversation, and it was great to actually, be able to sit down with you. Again, been following you for a long time, so this was really a pleasure. So thanks so much, and we'll make sure to add some links to the show notes. So if you want to let folks know where they can find you, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, Joe and John, thank you so much for the invite. This has been an awesome conversation. Anybody who's interested in more of my spicy takes should definitely go check out SEOforlunch.com. That's the best way to read some of my previous newsletters, including the one that will now have been published in arrears on attribution. But sign up for the newsletter. Otherwise, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. So if you just go into LinkedIn, type in Nick LeRoy, you'll find me, or go into that good old Google. I don't think they have an AI overview yet for Nick LeRoy LinkedIn, but no promises by the time this goes live. But let's give it a shot. But yeah, no, I'd love to connect, and just like we have with you guys, I love bantering about the industry. We got to get creative.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Take care.
Thank you.